Hi, my name is Dawn Lombard and I'm the artist behind Dawn Lombard Glass and Metal. This is me, and I'm here in my studio today to give you a little look around behind the scenes and give you an example of one of the newest techniques that I learned during my free time during 2020, if you know what I mean. So I've been on this art journey for just shy of 20 years. In fact, next year will be 20 years that I've been doing this. Full-time, I've been doing it for about 6 years now. Prior to that, I spent 23 years in corporate America working in sales and marketing in the consumer packaged goods arena. But I will tell you, this is a whole lot better. When I started out with my art, my sister had asked me to join her on a glass bead making trip. It was a local shop, and I hesitantly agreed, thinking, well, what am I going to do with a melt glass? Well, what I started out making was making glass beads. And these are made out of Moretti glass from the Murano section of Italy. I loved making these beads. They were so gorgeous, so amazing. And then a company named Pandora came into play, and the imports started coming in, and these beads were selling for 3 for $1. And that's when I realized, this may not be the right business for me. So one of the things that I used to make glass beads is powdered glass. And I'm going to take you over to look at that powdered glass right now. So as I mentioned, when I was making glass beads, I had all this glass powder that I used to put on top of the glass beads in order to give it color and design. Well, one day I was looking at a YouTube video and I saw this woman put this very powder that you're looking at right now on a piece of copper. And I went, oh my God, this is absolutely beautiful. So, flash forward 10 years and I have not looked back from putting powdered glass onto 100% recycled copper, and I just love it. So one of my favorite techniques now is not only to put the powdered glass on top of recycled copper, but I've also learned this really cool technique of putting iron oxides onto copper and firing it so those iron oxides actually seep into the enamel and become one with the enamel. And I'm going to show you a little demonstration of how that's done. Stay tuned. So the first step in the process is to get a piece of copper. And here, like I said, I work with 100% recycled copper that I get from my local scrapyard. And this is just a demo, so we'll just give you an idea of what a finished piece would look like. So here we have our copper. I don't clean it. I would file it and smooth it if this was going to be a finished piece of jewelry, but for demonstration purposes, I think you'll get the idea. So here I'm putting the copper onto a pair of tweezers, just so that I can keep my hands away from the powdered glass. And always when I create my pieces, I always put on what's called counter enamel. And counter enamel is basically the leftover colors from working on a project. And you always save those because that's what we put on the back side. So I'm putting a nice even coating of the powdered glass onto the back. Again, this is called counter enamel. And we take that copper and enamel and I bring it over to my firing station where I have my trivet set up. I put that piece on a trivet very carefully, making sure that I don't drop it and lose all the enamel, which happens a lot. So it's going to get a little bit noisy, so bear with me. Here is the torch I use. And this is a standard plumber's torch that you can find at, the big box home shops, and it's connected to a barbecue tank, propane. So let's go ahead and fire the first round of enamel. Done. So those grains of glass now have become one with this piece of copper. I'm going to let that cool for a couple of minutes, and let's go over to our next step, which is working with iron oxide decals. This is just the coolest thing ever. You buy water slide decal paper, and it's this shiny paper. This is the back side, and this is the front where I put this into my laser printer, and I print out the designs that I want to fuse onto my enamel piece. So you can do words, you can do pictures, you can do designs. One of my favorites that I've been doing a lot of is called Doodles. So this is my Doodles series, and I think it's pretty close to the bracelet that I showed you earlier, which is this. So this is my Doodles bracelet. Just love it. Now you can't change the color of the water slide decal. It's always going to be a sepia color when fired correctly, so you see that it's black here right now. Once I fire it, it's going to turn a sepia color, and that's, again, the copper oxides being fused into the enamel. So let's get a piece of water slide decal into water, and that's going to release the glue from the paper. We'll let that sit for a minute. Check on our enamel, see if it's cool. I'm going to quench it just to make sure that it's cool. Feels good to me. So now, with this beautiful array of color, what color should we use? I always like to use a light color when I am working with decals, because it really makes the color pop. So we're looking at Buttercup Yellow, a great spring color. My gosh, it's yummy. So again, I'm going to put my copper piece onto the trivet. I'm going to grab a sifter. There's my handy dandy sifter. Grab some powdered glass and coat the opposite side of that copper. Get a nice even coating, which looks about good. So now we're going to take that piece again, bring it over to the trivet. Very carefully get it on that 3-point trivet, trying not to spill any of the glass. Boy, that took a long time to learn. Okay, and we are ready for our next firing. Powdered glass has become one with the recycled copper. Okay, we're going to let this piece cool, and one of the best ways I found to let these pieces cool is to take it over to a piece of steel. You can put it right in between a piece of steel, and boy, that cools the metal really, really quick. We'll give that a second. And now we'll come over and check our water slide decal to see if the glue has released. Give it a little wiggle, little wiggle, little wiggle, and there, the glue just released. And we're going to wait a few minutes to have our enamel cool, and I'll get back to you in a minute. Okay, so now the enamel has cooled. Looks pretty good. We're going to try to get that water slide decal onto the face of the enamel, and that's just a matter of delicately sliding it off, tapping it on, and now what we want is all of the water to dry up, because if we were to fire this as is with all the water, you would see lots and lots and lots of bubbles come up, and it would actually distort the image that you see. So we're going to let this dry, excuse me. We're going to let this dry, and as you can see, I've got a nice handy dandy pellet stove here, and my little trick for drying is to put it on the ledge, and we'll be back in a few minutes to fire it. So now we're going to check on our enamel piece to see if all the water is gone. And we won't know that until we put a torch to it. So one of the little tricks that I've learned is to use a smaller size torch, a small handheld butane torch called a blazer. I use this to test to see whether or not that decal is actually dry enough to handle the larger torch. Now, if we see any bubbles when I go to light it, that means it's too soon and we have to wait until it dries more. So let's take a look. I'm very gently adding heat. And so far I'm not seeing any bubbles. I'm going to keep applying that heat. I'm still not seeing bubbles, which is a good sign. It's starting to smoke just slightly, which means that the glue is melting off. I think you can see that smoke now. So that means we can come in with the big guns, this guy, and we are going to torch the piece until it catches on fire. And please don't be disturbed when you see the fire. That is literally the glue and the paper burning off. And the iron oxides will be left, and the yellow enamel will absorb it. So, watch this. So we had a successful firing. I was able to see the smoke come off of the piece, meaning the paper and the glue burned off. And we can see a beautiful brown color in the enamel. Those are the iron oxides. And now it's just a matter of letting this piece cool. It's very hot. So we're going to let that piece cool. And if this were a final piece of jewelry, I would go ahead and do a setting. And that would look, like I said, like the Doodle Bracelet. So in this instance, I took all those individual tiles and I put them together to create this gorgeous bracelet. And in fact, Pins and Needles, which I am showing in this year, has a piece that includes a doodle. So you can find this piece in the show, and it was done with the technique I just showed you. Thank you for visiting me in my happy place. I hope you had fun, and we'll see you next time. Bye now.